So, Shay and Jice, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I would like to know, what are you up to? What's going on? I see you out in the community making huge impacts, making a huge difference, and I just want you to share.
So I guess I would say, ultimately, what we're up to is really getting authentic and real about building community, building culture, and having a seat at the tables that we want to have a seat at, as well as tearing down stereotypes, tearing down perceptions, not just outside of the community, but also inside of the community, and looking at how to really make impact with regards to the systems that govern our day-to-day lives. And so that feels like this big, huge bite. And really it is. I mean, we're literally thinking, holistically around how our community operates and where we can touch those things, where we can support other people who are like in their lane, and really being intentional to be in our lane around these topics, but really wanting to look at how we begin to make that impact inside of our community.
Okay. I think you hit it very well. And I think transparently what the beautiful part of it is that we're looking at today, and then we're looking at generationally. How can we change this for our kids, And with me, I don't even have kids yet. I think it's been really huge to have community buy-in and community support, but also to know if we don't get that, our mission's that big that we're not stopping regardless. So it's a twofold thing, but community is at the heart of everything we're doing. I think and it's safe to say, I think the Black community, not this community, but being honest about saying the Black, and not just being like, oh, people of color, or we've been really intentional about no, Black people deserve to have somebody that's fighting for them. And yes, unity comes, and yes, we're gonna have inclusion, and yes, all those things come, but what about just saying, hey, Black community, we're here for you right now?
And in what ways, what programs you do, or what projects are you doing? Can you just share what ways you're doing this, what steps you're taking?
Absolutely.
Oh man, programs, projects, it feels like it's like the whole gambit, literally. Well, I walked in here, I'm ecstatic, because I just feel like today has just been a great day. It's been a lot of progress being made on a lot of these programs and projects and things. And so, first of all, the Black Business Initiative has historically done business startup. We have grown into developing a mentorship program, and then we have also worked with businesses to gain access to capital. So those are kind of like our signature programs. But at this point, we're in the process of really working on some very deliberate partnerships where we are bringing on other brands that handle a variety of other topics with regards to mindset, with regards to branding, marketing, media, and other areas of business in general, and really aligning with those organizations to support them.
I do Brother Jeff's show, so I think having those conversations that we don't necessarily have in the community is one thing I'm really big on. Interviewing people that are talking about policy, that are talking about what it really takes to make it, where they're talking about the things that make real life differences. And I think that's been a huge thing for us, to not only be relevant in the times, but to talk about the things that aren't so talked about in our community, that aren't so glamorous, that are not just about entertainment and the fun things, but the things that sometimes are hard and uncomfortable. And really hitting that, and creating conferences and workshops and things around that is really a big part of what we're doing.
So when you say generationally, with your work with entrepreneurship, that you feel is a way to help generations to come, because you have that mindset, or go ahead and share it.
Take what's happening here in 5 Points as an example. We were just having this conversation recently, right? So from a political standpoint, there's been a lot of, pointing the fingers, who's done what, under what administration, right? And what's interesting is that even inside of that small politic game, there's some people who are off limits. No one wants to touch Wellington Webb. No one wants to even discuss what happened in the 12 years of Wellington Webb being the mayor of Denver, and where things have kind of taken on and taken a turn for people definitely aren't okay to jump in on what they feel Michael Hancock has done or not done. But what we don't understand is that a lot of these things have literally been set up for generations. So really, if you're thinking about 12 years now, 12 years before that, that's half of a generation already. And really these changes started in the administration, at least in the administration prior to
Hancock,
Webb.
Prior
to Webb, right?
Absolutely.
So you're probably talking about 30 years of planning before you see what you see today.
Yes.
And where the fingers get pointed and how that, comes out. And to be clear, I really am careful about not attaching myself to any particular political affiliation, because I believe in voting on policy and not people. So I don't think that it's really an issue of who is in office. It's about what is happening and what policy is on the table and how we affect that and how it affects us, right? So this is not an endorsement of Hancock, and it's also not an admonishment of Hancock. It's just having the conversation of recognizing where these things have started and how far down the line they go, right? So now you think about, let's say, opportunity zones. So people are beginning to talk about these opportunity zones like they're this great thing. Well, if you begin to go back historically, what you'll find is that the baby boomer generation, which is where the majority of this country's wealth is being held, baby boomers were of the generation where the government was infusing all of this wealth, right? So you have a lot of redlining, so they were able to get property. Yep. You have a lot of tax cuts and tax incentives, so they were able to start growing industry, manufacturing industries, agriculture, all these things were able to come up with a lot of tax breaks and like all these different things happening. So we look at opportunity zones like, oh, great, but Black folks are not in a position to really, by and large, take advantage of the opportunity zones, not in the same way that the baby boomers are able to. But what's happening is that millennials are losing wealth. Yeah. So baby boomers' grandchildren, third generation really, their third generation is losing wealth. So now opportunity zones come into play. They just shored themselves up for the next 40 years. They just literally jumped their wealth. They're infusing it into these opportunity zones. It's being ran and controlled and passed down to millennials, who will now be able to take tax incentives and tax credits for another 40 years. So we don't even get what's happening. Right. And we're celebrating things like, oh, Nipsey Hussle bought a house, bought a building in the opportunity zone. Great for Nipsey Hussle. And I'm not knocking that in anyway. I think if you can, we should absolutely take advantage of that, right? Yeah. But from a systemic standpoint, we're just not getting it. We're not seeing like how they just did this, and we'll be really quick to try and blame whoever, right? The low-hanging fruit, whoever, to try and say, this is what you've done to our communities. These people are planning intergenerationally. Absolutely. We're talking about each other, and we're infighting on what's going to happen over the next 4 years. Right. Like, give me a break. If you want it to, like, Hancock is not an issue. If you really want to affect policy, you should be thinking about who you're going to groom and who you're going to put in place after Hancock, and make sure that person has 12 years and make sure that you have a successor after that person. Exactly. So you should be thinking how you're going to lock this down for the next 12, 24 years down the line, right? Absolutely. That's how you start to think intergenerationally. And those types of conversations are happening here and there in our community.
When I listen to you both speak, it sounds like you both are really empowering other people to realize what impact that they have. And it's not just like yes, you want to make sure you're grooming the next person or whatever, but you're looking deep within, like, okay, well, what are you doing? What is your Black agenda? What policies do you want to have happen? Right. So I like that you're like doing that accountability. So what is your personal story for why this is important to you?
Do we have the time?
Do we need to spike this? No, but yeah. Whoever wants to get now.
I think for me, first of all, I'm very quick to acknowledge that, like, I come from Oakland, California, but I don't come from like that super hard knock life. Like I've been middle class my whole life. My parents are married. Like I've always grown up in a 2-person home. I was actually very fortunate. My sister, older than me, she did have some time living in an apartment, but by the time I was born, like my parents had already purchased their first home. Like all of these things have been a part of my story. So I don't have this hard knock life type of story. But what I do have is a story where I have really always fought for the underdog. Yeah. And it's been everywhere. On the playground, like, you're not going to believe that person around me. I remember being in high school when the Twin Towers were hit in 9/11, and me knowing like I was going to go to war for my country, right? And feeling very patriotic, like not knowing even at that time, and again, just being like younger and not actually recognizing that the U.S. is like this huge powerhouse and that, we have all this military power. But what I did see was this attack and on our own soil, and people crying and people losing their families and this unforgettable moment. And at that time, in my mind, being, just in high school and not particularly being conscious of really, anything, feeling like we were attacked, I'm like, oh no, like, I'm going. So I joined the military after 9/11. And that, in general, I think has definitely lended to a level of discipline, a level of a value system. And I think my parents placed a value system in me very strongly. Like, I come from a very principled house, but I don't know that I had words to it. And so the military gave me like language around a value system where I really understood that there were ways and things that you live by, like integrity and duty and honor and selfless service. And it was like these things really resonated very strongly with me even after leaving the military.
For me, I think it has been, I grew up like Jice in a 2-parent home. From a young age, I was always hit with, you can be anybody you want to be, you can do anything you want to do. My mom was huge on that, because it was like, at first I was growing up, I'm from Denver, Colorado. I lived in Arizona for a while. I was like the only black kid in my school and all these things. So identity has always been huge in my household. And my mom always made sure that I understood I can do and be anything. I really held true to that. And like when she said that, I took it and I ran with it. And I started to do anything that they said black people couldn't do, I wanted to do, and I wanted to show up. They're like, oh, you go to a Cherry Creek school, you can't give the graduation speech. So I made sure I gave the graduation speech.
Nice.
Oh, you can't do this. Oh, so now I'm going to go to state and I'm going to win state awards. And for me, it always became, let me show you exactly what I can do, because I can do anything I want to do. And then I realized, oh, other people are looking at this as an example, so let me give them more to look at, and let me encourage them, and made me go and teach kids. And I started doing this program where I was mentoring kids, and I went and I lived in Mexico for a year, and I helped kids in Mexico, and it really gave me this sense of, if I believe I can do anything, and I live on purpose, for a purpose, and I give that to anybody, that's real hope. And that's something that I didn't realize how many people didn't grow up with that same value system. I didn't realize how many people didn't understand that. So it's like, my mom said I could be anything. I went to college and I went to New York City, and she's like, okay, I thought you would do something a little closer to Denver. I'm like, no, I want to go to Performing Arts College. I went and auditioned. She's like, in order to get into college, if I'm gonna spend all this money, you have to do it on the train station. So I was like, do my monologue on the train? Okay. Did the monologue on the train. She's like, oh, this girl's serious. Because she had instilled this in me, that I could do anything, I could be anything. The sky was literally the limit, and it still wasn't a limit. And I took that, and I remember reading at a young age Intozaki Shange for colored girls who consider suicide when the rainbow is enough. And literally, it's enough. And I really believed that in a deep place, that I was like, I'm not gonna stop. And I know that I don't have to work for anybody, and I know no matter what. And I realized that people that were living paycheck to paycheck weren't doing any better. And they had got into these 9-to-5s that seemed glorious, and they weren't happy. And I believe happiness and purpose and all those things were for a reason. And really instilling that in myself. And the people that I was around and the friendships, I was very mindful. And I know that mindset, faith, God's grace and mercy has really kept me in a place of being okay with being different, and standing out and saying, oh, that's not enough, I want more. I can have more. I can do better. And then I can bring somebody else up to do better. Because it means nothing if we're not pulling anybody along.
I'm fortunate that I had someone who said, if this is what you want to do, we're going to support you.
We'll be here. Right.
But even then, what I recognized as I was going through my journey is where that support kind of lied.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like, again, my parents being of that generation, like, my parents have built some wealth for themselves, and it's literally built. Like, my dad is in the middle of 15. He came from Houston, Texas, in the 40s, right? Like, my mom is from the Bay Area, basically San Francisco, California, or whatever. She grew up in the 50s as a biracial child, and the youngest of 11. So there was, it's huge families, right? So we come into this space, and I'm like trying to do all these things, and I'm getting verbal support, and I have like a cushion to fall back on. Yeah. But I definitely wasn't getting like monetary fiscal support. Like there was no, I'm going to invest with you. I'm going to court. It was just like, if that's what you want to do, great. When you fall, come knocking. We'll be here. No judgment. We got you.
See, that's beautiful.
Until a couple years ago.
Okay.
And a couple of years ago, I think my dad saw how serious I really was. It was like, she's not stopping. Yeah. It's been years. Like, it's been when are you going to go back to work?
Right? Well, when you say years, like how many years? Like when was he like, oh, she actually is serious?
So
like,
that
parents don't realize it until like last night. They all realized it was serious. Like,
yeah.
Almost 10.
Almost 10.
Yeah.
10 years.
Almost 10 years. Wow. From the time that I came up, so I left the military in 2005, active duty. Then I went into the Guard, but I left active duty, and that was my first stint of trying business. And it was just like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. That's nice. That was 2005. I would say, so 2019, right? So maybe a little bit longer than that, because by the time I actually got actual support, and my dad has definitely hit me with the, like, that's a great idea. Good job, honey. I love what you're doing. You know, by the time it was like, okay, let me cut you this check. Yeah. Let's partner on some things. Right. Would have been 2016. Wow.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, so, but I also want to point out something real powerful in all this, that you kept going. You, no matter what, you kept going, and that just shows something also, Shay, where you were saying how, like, it doesn't happen overnight. Success does not happen overnight. So that shows years you've been working on this, since 2005, and it's 2019 right now. So that just shows you it takes time. It takes so much. You, I mean, you both are doing so well, and it's just like we just see now. Oh, you guys, it just happened for you. No,
and it doesn't.
What you both have to share, what you've experienced. It's inspirational. Both sides. Doesn't matter how different from which end of the spectrum, because anyone can look at both of you and they can hear both of your stories and just see how powerful you are and where you came from and what you did and what you do to keep on believing yourself and knowing you are, like, yes, your parents supported you. Yes, your parents may not have or whatever, but it's just like, in different ways they did and didn't, and you still figure out how to do it yourself and keep going, and you had to believe it yourself. It's not about needing external validation or external anything to help push you forward. You had to do it within yourself, and that's amazing.
You put that so well. That's beautiful. I'll take that. And I think that more people should see that it doesn't matter how you grow up. It's your chance to make your life what you want it to be. And one thing I realize is no one is coming to save you.
Yes, right? You have to save yourself.
You have to save yourself in whatever aspect that is. Save yourself.
Yes. Right.
And I think having vision is more than anything, because if you have vision, you may get off track, you may slide, you may do this thing, but a vision board for me was my lifeline. It's literally the thing that I look at and be like, Shay, are you doing anything you said you wanted to do? Like, oh, okay, okay. It's the reassurance sometimes, and then it's the, hey, sometimes, like, girl, get back on track because you're far off. So I think everybody find a vision and go for it, soar. Like, you're gonna land somewhere close to it if you at least have some type of knowledge of what you want.
Yeah, it's important for you to continue doing what you're doing, and like you said, in the Black community, because we continue to see day after day, 24/7, images of us in an oppressive state and being brutalized, being murdered, and just so many negative ways we see ourselves, and we don't realize what we have within us. Not that we don't realize, but we continue to be seeing images and videos of us as not empowered or valuable or just inventors and engineers, and we're more than entertainers. We're more like, we have so much to offer, and you being out in the community showing people what they have within them to succeed in whatever way they want to is so important, and so please continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you, and thank you for this, because I think that these type of things need to happen more often, because you have the Real Housewives and you have all these things, and you see the Black women coming together and bickering and fighting and all those things. But sitting down and having tea and having real transparent conversation, it has to happen more often. So thank you for allowing that space, because there is things like that happen like this. Like, Jice and I do this, and we weren't friends from the beginning. We didn't come up and know each other, and I think people need to see those things happen more often, because it's possible to have great friendship with women and to have, conversation and not to have all the other things that look like that this would be in the Black community.
Yeah, we actually are loving everybody, like, yes, right? We actually do get along. We actually do love each other. We actually do support each other, encourage each other, yes.
Absolutely.
And so, and the more we keep doing this kind of stuff, then people won't think that it's fake and it's not real, but continue to see the housewives, like, that's what's real. No, it may be called reality TV, but that's not the lying to you.
Right.
So,
and I want to thank you again as well for even just inviting us out and thinking highly enough of the work that we're doing to have us on. And it's an honor to know when others in the community see the work, and that for us says
everything. Keep going.
Yes.
Because sometimes that's just a little piece of encouragement that you need. Like, literally, just like, oh, cool. Because sometimes it's just this, and you're like, I don't know if anybody sees it, hears it. But
everyone sees it and hears it. It's making a difference.
And especially on those bad days. When you
days.
have those bad days, and it's like, I think when you reached out to me, it's just interesting that when you reached out to me, I was having one. I was like, oh my God. And then it was like, can you come? I was like, I should keep going. Yes, keep going. point. Like somebody sees you. Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And whenever you feel like you're not making a difference, or you don't know if anyone's seeing what you're doing or it's impacting, just remember those moments when people have come to you and shared what difference you made in their life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.